So I think welcome everyone to the sixth of our quarterly webinars, which is run by the ASAP team. I'm based in the University of Birmingham, and I'm currently in a room full of other University of Birmingham academics. And actually, we're very lucky at the moment. We've got David Mpanga visiting us from the University of Nairobi, so he also sat in the room with us. As I think most of you know, ASAP is a program funded by the DFID East African Research Hub, and the program brings together UK and East African researchers in air pollution, urban planning, economic geography, engineering, public health, social sciences, and development studies to provide a framework for improved air quality management in East African cities. And I guess before we go any further, if there's any difficulties in people hearing us, maybe they could let us know sooner rather than later. That would be good. And leave a message. So the idea behind these webinars, they're intended to introduce elements of the ASAP research program, facilitate discussion with interested parties, and allow questions to be posed to the research team during the course of the research. And so we've got presentations from both the University of Nairobi and the University of Birmingham, focused on low-cost sensors and their usage and exploring vulnerability in air pollution exposure, and are to be delivered by David Mpanga from the University of Nairobi, who I've already mentioned, and also William Avis from the University of Birmingham. So just to let you know, the webinar will be recorded for academic use. And if you, at any point during the presentation, please feel free to type a question into the chat box, which is the speech bubble at the right-hand side of the screen. And we'll collate these questions during the talk, and we'll put a number of these questions to the speakers after their talk. And so without further delay, I'll now hand over to David and William for their presentations.
Thank you, Francis. My name is David Mpanga. I'm from the University of Nairobi. I'm a chemical consultant and an environmental research person. I'm here to present to you something I covered in the title, that is the use of cheap and alternative technology in addressing social problems. In this case, my focus will be on the use of social sensors in addressing the air quality problem in Nairobi. Studies have shown that there exists a strong association between air pollution and public health, and recently we had the case of PC Baker, a 9-year-old girl from London who died of fatal asthma, which is believed to have been caused by air pollution. And one tends to imagine, if the quality of air in London is so clean compared to what is happening in the developing countries, how many cases of unreported DEBRA are there in the developing countries, considering that the level of pollution is beyond imaginable. The World Health Organization in its report attributed over 7 million deaths to air pollution, with 90% of those deaths taking place in the developing countries. One thing that is surprising is that while these cases are high in the developing countries, we have an inequality in air quality monitoring. That is, for these countries, the death rates are high, but the number of monitoring stations are very low. Therefore, the information that we are getting from these countries is quite few. So it becomes a problem to address these problems. And hence, there is a poor understanding of the rate and trends and concentration, as well as the sources of these air pollutants. This is a map adopted from the World Air Quality Index. If you look at the case of Africa and some parts of Asia, we have few monitoring stations compared to what is in Europe and in North America. But the number of deaths are quite high. So there is need for action to be taken in these countries to ensure that this inequality is addressed and mitigation of the impacts of air quality is also mitigated. If we scale down to the case of Nairobi, an article by Vidal showed that the air pollution levels is beyond imaginable. The article attributes over 1.5 million deaths which are projected to be related to air pollution if the current situation goes on, considering that the population in Nairobi is rising and we have an increase in the fleet density of cars, particularly second-hand cars coming from Europe and Japan. Therefore, the air quality should be addressed in these areas, and we cannot do so relying on the traditional means of monitoring as they do not offer a significant amount of information. And this is where the case of local sensors come into play. Why local sensors in Nairobi? These sensors are cheap as compared to the conventional methods of air quality monitoring. If you compare them on a price to price comparison, you'll find that these sensors are 3 times less price compared to the traditional means of measurement using fixed monitoring station. Thus, the monitoring is just a reserve of well-funded organizations, and we don't have many of them in the developing part. And also, the use of local sensors is easy to run and install. They also offer the benefit of offering real-time monitoring of the air pollutants as compared to the kits which normally give an information on just the hot points. And if you compare the studies that have been done on the use of local sensors, we realize that they give an accurate measurement of pollutants. Therefore, they are a good alternative to addressing the problem. Some of the studies that have shown the potential of these sensors in Nairobi, we have one study conducted by D'Souza, and this study deployed the use of 6 sensors to monitor the level of PM, that is particulate matter, and it also besides the PM, gases were also monitored using these sensors, that is the NOxes and the SOxes, and the study factored in vulnerable sites, that is 4 schools within Nairobi and a community center in Kibera, and one study was also done. One of the sites was also in the UNEP headquarters. The study highlighted the potential of local sensors, and it showed that most of the sites in the vulnerable areas exceeded the WHO limitations for both PM and the gases. And one of the highlights that came from the study was that while these studies offer a good alternative to measurement of pollutants, there is a significant aspect of considering the limitations they have, and that is the aspect of calibration. The next study conducted by Hope and others in 2018 factored in some of the limitations that were addressed in D'Souza, and in this case, the sensors were calibrated before being deployed to their respective sites. These sensors were deployed in 3 sites in Kenya. 2 of them were in Nairobi, where an urban background at the University of Nairobi was considered, and a roadside site in Nairobi, and the rural site was in Nanyuki, which is near Mount Kenya. The sensors showed a good temporal and spatial variation of PM across the 3 sites, and there was also an incremental pattern of PM observed also in the 3 sites, and it was evident from the measurements that the WHO limits were exceeded in both urban sites. This shows that these sensors have the potential to address the problem of missing data from this part of the world. The sensors have become so popular in addressing the air quality problem in Nairobi, and have focused on some of the organizations that have embarked on their use in monitoring the air quality. We have the Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology, which is using the local sensors as part of the ASAP Work Package 2 project. And we also have the Code for Africa, which is installing some sensors in some parts of Nairobi, such as Kibera. We also have the Stockholm Environmental Institute, which is deployed some sensors in some informal sectors such as Mikuru, where they engage some aspect of citizen science. And we also have the Vaisala Africa, which is also using the sensors in some parts of Nairobi. And the Kenya Met Department has also installed some sensors within their stations to work alongside the fixed monitoring stations. What are my takeaway points for this? The law for sensors remain Africa's chief hope in bridging the gap in air quality data. If we are to address the inequality that has been stored in the World Air Quality Index, we need to have a revolutionary shift in how we are going to deal with the problem of air pollution. That is, we have to use cheaper and alternative technologies such as sensors, but we have to ensure that they are properly calibrated, and once they are calibrated, they can be deployed in the different sites for monitoring. These sensors have the potential to offer greater spatial mapping of urban air pollution in Africa and other vulnerable areas, which my colleague William will address in his presentation.
Thank you very much, David. So without further ado, we'll move straight on to William Avis, and then we'll collate the questions and pose them to both the speakers at the end. So over to William.
Hello, everyone. Today I am going to present findings from two vulnerability scoping studies we undertook in Nairobi. These were implemented in partnership with the University of Nairobi, with David and his supervisor, Professor Michael Chari, leading on the air quality monitoring alongside the University of Birmingham. So by way of a bit of background, we know that urban air pollution is a pressing and multi-sectoral development challenge, representing major health, economic and social threats. The Lancet Commission, as identified by David, has estimated that air pollution is a significant risk factor in the deaths of between 5 to 7 million people, equivalent to 1 in 10 deaths. So it's a significant global health concern. The World Bank has also estimated that the cost to the global economy of air pollution, primarily related to foregone labour income each year, equates to $225 billion US. And if one compares global deaths for significant sources, war, murder, road accidents, childhood and malnutrition, it's clear that urban air pollution, both indoor and outdoor, is a significant concern. To reiterate this point, this graph shows the kind of increasing death toll associated with urban global air pollution from 1990 to 2016. So whilst other leading causes of death, i.e. access to unclean water, are decreasing, urban air pollution in particular is increasingly exerting a growing death toll. So, whilst these headline figures, more importantly, when we look at these, the death toll associated with both indoor and outdoor air pollution in Africa, it's also clear that there's a significant story to tell. When one combines both indoor and outdoor, it's a leading killer in both Ethiopia and Uganda, dwarfing those deaths associated with unsafe water, unsafe sanitation, childhood malnourishment. Whilst in Kenya, the story's a little bit more mixed, with it leading to equivalent death tolls to unsafe water and unsafe sanitation. Whilst these headline figures are alarming, they do tend to gloss over the disproportionate impact of poor air quality on certain populations, locations, and occupations. Vulnerability scoping studies are intended to explore the experiences of those particularly vulnerable populations, occupations, and locations in the East African cities of Addis, Kampala and Nairobi, and also in Delhi and Ahmedabad in India, particularly exploring those areas exposed to either high levels of indoor or outdoor populations. So what do we mean by vulnerability? Well, the WHO considers as vulnerable groups the young, the old, those with underlying diseases, fetuses, groups exposed to other toxicants that interact with urban air, with outdoor air pollution, and those from low socioeconomic status. And in the vulnerability scoping studies, we explore 3 dimensions of vulnerability: exposure, i.e. the amount of time spent or the level of exposure to outdoor or indoor air pollution; susceptibility, i.e. what makes an individual or a group more susceptible than others; and adaptive capacity, i.e. what steps are available to either minimise or reduce their exposure or take actions to address its impact. So throughout the ASAP project, we're looking at vulnerabilities and amongst a number of different groups. In East Africa, we're looking at the young, the old, motorcycle taxi drivers, waste pickers, and also locations such as bus stations and slums. We've also undertaken 2 studies in India, looking at pollution's impact on tourist sites and amongst the pavement dwelling communities in Delhi. So for the first vulnerability scoping study we completed under the ASAP project, we looked at particularly at-risk groups, i.e. the young. Why is this important? Well, we know that the length of time children spend in school has increased from 1 to 11 years. We know that the average length of the school year ranges from circa 175 to 220 days. And we know that kids spend up to 8 hours per day at school, at which only 2 to 3 hours is spent outdoors. Finally, recent reports have estimated that around 300 million children were exposed to toxic levels of outdoor air pollution. For the first study we looked at air pollution at an inner city Nairobi school. The school was located in the central business district with school children commuting from primarily areas in the close vicinity of the school, but also from areas further away in north, east and west Nairobi. Why is it important that we look at health impacts on children? Well, we know that children are particularly vulnerable to various cardiorespiratory effects of exposure to air pollution. Children are more susceptible to both the acute and chronic adverse effects of air pollution, with exposure considered to reduce lung function, exacerbate asthma, increase respiratory diseases, and increase allergies. Also, there is emerging evidence that air pollution may have some impact on childhood cognitive development. Studies in China, in the US, and some in Holland have highlighted that air pollution is neurotoxic, and that exposure to air pollution during pregnancy or infancy has been associated with delayed cognitive development. When considering the sources and impact of air pollution, it's important to consider those sources that originate within the school grounds, i.e. the shaded area of this illustration, and those that may originate from external to the school environment, i.e. local traffic, etc. What we did at the school in Nairobi was to deploy 2 sensors, one to monitor indoor classroom air pollution levels, and one to monitor air pollution levels on the school grounds in an outdoor location. And this image, raw data collected by the APCs that David and Michael Patari located at the school, showing relatively close correlations between indoor and outdoor levels. What we try to do within the ASAP project is to translate some of this information in a manner that is hopefully more accessible to lay audiences and communicate some of the health implications of air pollution exposure. We have adopted the US EPA Air Quality Index, which gives a graded list of pollution levels from good to hazardous, effectively adopts a traffic light system. When we look at the air pollution recordings from the school, this is average air pollution recordings over a 24-hour average school day. The dotted black line shows indoor classroom air pollution levels, and the thick black line shows outdoor air pollution levels. What it shows is that throughout the school day, air pollution levels exceed moderate levels, predominantly hovering around the unhealthy for sensitive group levels. It shows that air pollution is at its worst during the morning commute, i.e. when people are arriving for lessons. And if one was to consider how this information could be used to inform policies or affect changes to reduce exposure, one could consider moving outdoor activity towards the end of the school day, i.e. when air pollution levels are lower. We also undertook a survey amongst school children. These survey findings should be caveats by an awareness this is a relatively small sample, and the age of respondents is between 10 and 13. But what these findings showed is that school students have a relatively high perception of vulnerability to air pollution. When we started to disaggregate these by geographic location, it appeared that those from central, eastern, and western areas have a similar perception of vulnerability to air pollution, whilst those in Nairobi perceive themselves to be, to a certain degree, vulnerable. Discussing this with David and Michael, they highlighted that North Nairobi tends to be less urbanised and therefore less polluted, and so this finding probably does highlight differences in air pollution perception. When we look at this across different locations, i.e. micro-environments in which school children are spending time, again, North Nairobi tends to report lower perceptions of indoor, outdoor air pollution in all areas other than the school environment, i.e. indoors and other locations. When one compares this to the central Nairobi students, again, it highlights that this group tends to identify higher levels of air pollution in all locations. We also are sought to explore respondents' perceptions of air pollution's adverse impacts. And again, what was interesting from findings here is that while students were cognizant of the immediate impacts of air pollution, i.e. it's this in the air or it's causing itching or burning eyes, they were less cognizant of its impact on long-term respiratory problems or impact on allergies and respiratory health. So again, it suggests that whilst the school children was young, more effort could be made to kind of sensitise them to the long-term health impacts of air pollution. And it's clear that air pollution may have some impact on causes of absence from school. When we asked them to report the health issues that led to them missing school, issues such as eye infection, sinus problems, respiratory health issues, and skin irritation were reported amongst the school children. Again, this is now that require further exploration. One of the other areas we sought to track is how did survey respondents perceive their ability to take action to improve air pollution or minimise exposure. One of the pleasing outcomes of the survey was that school kids felt there were options and activities that could be undertaken to minimise air pollution's impact on them and their city. So they did have a certain degree of hope for the future. And it was also clear that school children had a certain degree of understanding of the sources of air pollution. All of the survey respondents identified motor vehicles at the school as a major source of air pollution, and this would certainly be corroborated by our partners at the University of Nairobi. The reports also seek to identify a whole host of recommendations, both at the individual level, the organisational level, and the governmental level, for steps that can be taken to address air pollution. I won't go over these in too much depth, but what they effectively suggest is that individuals can be empowered by providing information and enhancing their knowledge of sources of air pollution and its potential impact. This will allow them to take actions or steps to minimise exposure in certain locations, whether it's adopting different commutes to school or avoiding major roads. There are also actions that schools can take. This can include assessing the sources of air pollution that originate within the school grounds. And one of the really pleasing things about the study in Nairobi is that the school had already undertaken a whole host of actions to address sources of air pollution. They had banned the burning of waste within the school grounds. They had adopted sugarcane briquettes for the kitchen, moving from charcoal usage. And they'd also undertaken a planting drive, i.e. planting plants around the vicinity of the schoolyard to hopefully absorb or act as a barrier to some of the kind of encroachment of air pollution from the local roads. What is clear is that a lot of the interventions that can or should be taken to address air pollution in school must be supported by government. This can involve analysing current or future school sites, requiring minimum distances between schools and pollution sources, and simple things like, for example, at the school in Nairobi, there was a bus station located outside the school gates. One simple quick fix would be to move that bus station 100 metres down the road to at least have some partial impact on air pollution originating from buses. that was the first study we undertook. Are we okay for time? Yeah, perfect. I will quickly give you an overview of the second study. So this study sought to look at occupational exposure. The rationale for this is that we know that it's estimated that there are up to 2.78 million work-related deaths annually. Of these work-related deaths, approximately 86% are related to work-related seizures. We know that certain groups are exposed to higher levels of air pollution, and these can be those working at street-side locations, street vendors, traffic police, taxi drivers, but also those working in occupations such as waste picking, who may utilise the burning of waste as a method to access certain resources. Such groups also are afflicted by low socioeconomic status or living and working conditions and receive little support from local governments. Estimates suggest that those engaged as waste pickers in dump sites such as Dandora, the focus of this study, earn as little as $1 per day. So this study looked at air pollution exposure at Dandora dump site, one of the largest open dump sites globally, which is located in East Nairobi. The orange dot shows the location of Dandora, and the blue dots highlight the location of local waste pickers, all of who live within 1 to 2 kilometres of the dump site. So why is occupational exposure important? So we know that people working on dump sites are at risk of developing respiratory diseases due to the practice of burning waste to recover valued materials. Evidence suggests that there is an association between low birth weight and preterm delivery, reported by women who live in close vicinity to dump sites. Areas close to dump sites have recorded an elevated prevalence of cancers. Cancer-related deaths are also higher in such areas. And we also know that there are social risks associated with the waste picking occupation. Children who are involved in waste picking may miss the opportunity to attend school, and this may jeopardise their transition to adulthood. More broadly, social stigmatisation is seen to compound the difficulties faced by waste pickers. Studies undertaken by UNEP in the vicinity of Dandora have explored the impact of living in or around a dump site on children, and these are reports of the health, some of the conditions afflicting those children. Alarmingly, of those children studied, 46.9% had respiratory issues. This may be associated with their exposure to indoor air pollution, but also some of the effects of outdoor air pollution, and certainly requires more exploration. So again, when considering the sources of air pollution in or around a dump site, it's important to understand dump site operations, characteristics of the dump site scale, location, size, the means of depositing or moving and sorting waste, but also the location of the dump site in relation to other sources of air pollution, distance from roads, etc. Again, we deployed, in this instance, one low-cost sensor to monitor air pollution, and this was located in close proximity to Dandora, so it gives a sense of background air pollution levels recorded around Dandora. And what this shows is the air pollution profile of Dandora dump site is completely different to that recorded at the school. It suggests that air pollution is relatively constant throughout the day. This is averaged out from the days in which air pollution was monitored. The dotted black line shows weekday, weekend recordings, and the thick black line shows weekday recordings. And it shows that air pollution levels are relatively constant. There is a similar kind of correlation with peak rush hour time, but one could assert that air pollution is pretty unhealthy throughout the day. Again, we undertook a survey. This time, because all of the survey respondents were waste pickers, we disaggregated findings according to age. And this gave some interesting kind of findings. What we highlighted was that the very young of the waste pickers and the very oldest of the waste pickers tended to report higher perceptions of vulnerability, whilst the middle age brackets tended to have a less kind of heightened sense of vulnerability. When we looked at perception of vulnerability across different locations, this finding was borne out. Again, the youngest group recorded the highest perceptions of air pollution across all locations, with the 25 to 44 and 45 to 64 age groups reporting lowest perceptions of vulnerability. Again, this is a relatively small sample size, so findings need to be backed up by more robust and large-scale studies. When we looked at the perceptions of air pollution's adverse impacts, again, the kind of immediate visceral experiences of air pollution were highlighted, kind of the fact that it makes the air smell bad, and it triggers allergies, yet there was less association with its impact on long-term health or the ability to earn an income, i.e. the potential impact of health on wage-earning activities. As one would imagine, the survey respondents, i.e. who were waste pickers, reported a whole host of different types of ailments that had afflicted them during the last 12 months. Many of these may have some relation to air pollution, but will also have causes related to low socioeconomic status, poor housing conditions, and poor diets. But interestingly, chest pains, coughing, and headaches were highlighted by many of the respondents. In terms of adaptive capacity, I think it's important to note that waste pickers have limited adaptive capacity due to their low socioeconomic status, the social stigmatization they face, and their operation in the informal economy, i.e. outside of any formal support structures. So again, most of the groups reported relatively low senses of their ability to improve air pollution or to minimise exposure. Interestingly, when we asked respondents to identify perceptions of sources of air pollution in their workplace, as one would expect, waste disposal and burning of waste emerged as a primary cause. Motor vehicles was way down the list and only reported by a small number as a secondary source of air pollution. So it does suggest that one size fits all efforts to address air pollution needs to be cognizant of different sources of air pollution in different locations and what kind of mechanisms and processes might support and minimisation of those particular sources. Again, we came up with a whole host of recommendations of potential opportunities to either support individual waste pickers, to support organisations working with waste pickers, or to encourage government to take actions to address air pollution associated with the burning of waste. What is interesting with this study is that there are co-benefits with addressing issues of urban governance associated with solid waste management and urban air pollution. Dandora, as I mentioned, is one of the largest dump sites in Africa, and globally, I think it's listed third in number in terms of tons of waste stored there. It was declared full in the year 2000, I think, yet continues to be operated. So in terms of the recommendations we came up with, we have to be cognizant that the waste pickers have limited opportunities to reduce exposure. But some of the things they can be supported to do is to form collectives that may be able to negotiate better for improved working conditions or to be mainstreamed into solid waste management practices. In particular, we highlighted the need for actors, particularly within the civil society, to participate and work with waste pickers to support efforts to address some of the more hazardous elements of their job. Within India, there's a whole host of examples of waste picker collectives that have been supported by civil society groups, which have managed to mainstream their kind of engagement with solid waste management practices, but to also negotiate higher wages for recompense for the sorting of waste, but also to access to improved equipment or improved locations from which to operate. And again, government has a prime responsibility for taking aggressive actions to address solid waste management within urban centres, and can work with the informal sector to undertake recycling or sorting initiatives. So in terms of what next, we're developing a repository of studies that explore air pollution vulnerabilities in a number of contexts. We're extending this approach to look at a variety of different vulnerabilities in different contexts. We're particularly interested in kind of scaling up this approach to really explore some of the health impacts of air pollution, and we've actively looked to partner with civil society groups and government ministers to ensure that air pollution is factored into planning initiatives. One of the core roles of these vulnerability scoping studies is to think about how particular groups can be sensitised around the impact of air pollution and how we can support a degree of knowledge transfer with government, civil society and the private sector, and of course to develop new partnerships and new research initiatives. So that's it for me. These are kind of an overview of some of the studies that we are initiating. The two that I have talked to today, the green ones, have been launched. We have a couple of studies that are being undertaken in Impala that will be up over the next couple of months, similar with the ones in Addis, and the Indian ones are online and available also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William, and also thank you very much, David, for that. So we've got time for some questions. As I say, if there's questions from people online, please put it through the chat box and we'll endeavour to ask them. But before that, there's a few questions in the room here. So the first one someone's just handed me is that both presenters have highlighted the need to make research findings accessible and engaging for lay audiences, particularly those who are most affected by air pollution. So do our speakers have any views on how best to do this? Just remind you to talk into the, speak into the microphone.
Thank you so much for the question. One of the goals of science is to make information as accessible as it is to everyone. And we believe that if we are able to make air pollution better accessible to everyone, because it affects everyone. One of the goals is to make information as accessible to everyone. Since we believe that air pollution is affecting everyone, that the community by educating them on how this data relates to them, how it can improve their lives. That is what we do. For instance, in one of our studies, we did more years in the primary, and we realized that these students are quite much aware of what is happening to the air around them. They know that the air is getting impure day by day. They know it affects them, their health. So if you're able to engage more schools, and make sure that the new generation is aware of the problems and how best to solve them, that can be a good step towards solving the air quality problem.
I mean, I think at the core of the ATAC project is making research findings accessible, understandable, and engaging for lay audiences. One of the really pleasing things that emerged out of the Moi Avenue study is the engagement of David and Michael Katari, the professor at the University of Nairobi, with the school students. There were kind of various exchanges by the school students with the University of Nairobi, and were sensitised to the kind of impacts, causes, consequences of air pollution. I think both Michael and David and the school students really kind of relished that kind of engagement. I think similarly with the other study, the waste picker study, we engaged with a local civil society actor, the Nairobi Community Media House, who undertakes a whole host of kind of citizen journalism with members of low-income communities. That seems to be a kind of really useful model for kind of really engaging with and sharing knowledge alongside and co-producing research with local partners who are able to access the findings, critically engage with the findings, and pose questions to the academic community about how we can make our research more applicable to those who are often kind of isolated or from its work. So I mean, any civil society groups who have an interest in air pollution who would actively like to engage or partner with ATAC, I think we relish having those discussions, and indeed many discussions around that are engaging. And I think one of the principal mechanisms to do that is to kind of decipher some of the hard science that scientists Michael and David do with the local sensors and present it in a format where people can see what kind of impact it is having on them, what the levels of air pollution are, And we think the US EPA Air Quality Index provides a mechanism to do that. If people are unable to understand that, then we can explore other options. We also work with local artists, both in the UK and hopefully in Africa, to translate some of the impact of air pollution into kind of visual tools that people can see how or what air pollution looks like. And again, this is something that University of Nairobi colleagues have partnered with the University of Birmingham on.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the answer to that. So we've got one question coming in online now, which is saying, very interesting presentations, thank you. With respect to the Dandora dump site, are there any measures of methane? The methane may contribute to the high chest pain incidents that are reported. Would anyone like to comment on that? I mean, I can certainly comment straight away that we're not measuring methane within the ASAP project. Our feeling Prof. Kutari might have a greenhouse gas credit, which might be looking for that. Do you want to say anything on that, David, or outside the scope?
As part of the ASAP, our focus was on the particulate matter, but considering that Dandora is a dump site, we expect some methane gas to be produced, and studies have shown that to have a high impact on respiratory problems. So I believe with some studies, we think that it's part of ASAP and integrate that aspect into it, then it can be a good way to monitor the overall impact of
Thank you, David. So another question that was handed to me is, there's been a lot of talk about green infrastructure, especially in the UK at the moment, how green infrastructure, by green infrastructure, we mean trees and walls, maybe plants, so this green infrastructure can be used to minimise air pollution, potentially. Is there any scope for this type of work in East Africa?
I think very much so. Across Kampala and Nairobi, the government is focusing a lot on the kind of use of green infrastructure as a mechanism to address some of the causes and consequences of air pollution. I think more kind of rigorous scientific exploration is needed to assess what kind of green infrastructure has impact. I think Francis has worked with some colleagues at the University of Birmingham to explore green infrastructure and its relevance to addressing air pollution. And I think with the school grant is certainly a role to play for effectively reduce barriers between the road and the school.
Yeah, I mean, I think any barrier, it doesn't necessarily have to be green, will help if you can make the distance between the pollutants, between the source of the pollutant and the students. So it doesn't necessarily have to be green, but there's other benefits of having green infrastructure. Not only is it pleasant, but it can increase humidity and so on and so forth. So I think it can certainly be considered that a good scientific understanding is good.
I've got a question online, i.e. local sensors and the use of accuracy with regard to these sensors.
Yes, okay, so yeah, there's a question that's come in, is essentially, I don't know if this question came from Victor Anfusi from UNEP, and so his comment is, on local sensors, we need to be careful with the use of accurate, I guess badging things as accurate with regards to these sensors. So he makes the point that the particle measurements have a high degree of confidence, and I would argue, I would agree with that, and that's essentially because the technology is tried and tested, it's just miniaturized. But then we have to be a bit more careful with the chemical sensors or the gas-based sensors. Sorry, David or William, do you want to probably more David's question?
Okay, thank you, Victor, for the suggestion. You are very right that we need to be careful with the use of accurate. By accurate, what we mean here, we're trying to show that if you calibrate these sensors, you are trying to lower the uncertainty. So accurate, you are right. So what we are trying to do is lowering the uncertainty in their use so that at least we have information that is reliable.
I think one of the comments I would have on the low-cost sensors is that there is currently a proliferation of different types of sensors on the market, which is employed in various locations by various organisations. And as Victor and David and I think Francis would agree, there's a need to kind of test which ones are most successful. I think also it's not as simple as primary centre and locating it. They need to be calibrated according to local conditions, and they need to be maintained. And I think quite often these sensors are destroyed, left to their own devices, and that's when issues occur with the measurements. And I think certainly more attention needs to be paid to how we use this tool and how we can use it correctly rather than just deploying them as a quick fix to gathering data where it may be limited. I think there's also questions about how we deploy these sensors alongside fixed location monitoring. We were talking research today, air quality networks, as we have in London, as we have across India, which I think slowly they are spreading in Africa. I think in Kenya there's one at the US Embassy. I think in Kampala we have one located at the US Embassy and similarly in Addis, which is a great start and provides a useful message to compare findings across the city. I think the utility of local sensors is that it can be deployed anywhere, quickly, effectively, and usefully to really highlight technical changes, but also kind of issues associated with what impact certain interventions will have. And I think it's certainly something the ASAP project will look to explore. You know, if you have an intervention, for example, establishing a low emission zones, what impact does that have? If you change your fuel usage in your home, what impact may that have on air pollution sources, etc. So I think that's where the kind of local sensors come into their own.
Okay, so we've got another question. Final one. So how far have you got with presenting these wonderful recommendations, thank you, Evan, to relevant stakeholders like government and CSOs?
I mean, this is very much an ongoing exercise. So we have connections with the NIODI, the National Environment Monitoring Management Authority, so the acronyms in Kenya, where we are looking to present findings, engage in a constructive discussion about actions they can take. We also undertake to share the findings with local and international CSO groups. We presented to Save the Children to encourage them to engage around issues of air pollution. I mean, this is an ongoing discussion and an ongoing narrative that has to be had. You know, it's not about producing a piece of research and having that as the endpoint. We very much are scoping studies to identify an issue in a particular location, to highlight some of the questions that need to be asked, and to really engage others to kind of push forward that agenda. For example, with the school study, that was one school in one particular location. We're looking to undertake additional research in Nairobi, being led by Anthony at the University of Nairobi, exploring air pollution in schools. And similarly with the other studies, these are kind of part of a narrative and engagement, a discussion with a variety of different partners. So yeah, ongoing efforts, more need to be made, but we shall continue this discussion very closely.
Excellent, thank you very much, William. Thank you very much, David. So I think that's the end of our questions, unless there's any in the room. If not, say thank you to everyone for turning up to today's webinar. We'll post it online in the next few days. And so I know that as ever when we do these webinars, the sound quality can be somewhat intermittent. We are trying our hardest, but we'll post it online and hopefully that should all be very clear at that point. So with that, I'll say thank you, and we'll stop the call now. Some of you might be coming back in the next 10 minutes, but we'll open the line up for those who are coming back for a group meeting in 10 minutes' time. With that, I'd just like to say goodbye, and thank you very much for our two wonderful speakers.